Okay, this is Joe Leigh here for Seconds Out. Delighted, buzzing to be joined by Charlie SIMS. Charlie, this is the first time we've done an interview as well. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks, mate. Very good. Happy to be on, happy to be speaking with you. So thanks for having me.
No problem at all. Obviously, you're a busy man. What are your days looking like at the moment? Part boxing, there's other things going on in your life as well.
Yeah, flat out, like just flat out all day, every day, working across different time zones. So pretty tired most of the time, but I'm all right.
What do you think of the current stable at the Matchroom gym? I've been down there a couple of times so far this year. You've got some young prospects coming through. You've obviously got um, people in headline fights as well. So across the board, what do you make of the stable you guys currently have?
Probably the strongest it's ever been in terms of talent. You've got Conor Benn headlining against, I mean, he's just had a cracking probably last couple of years, but obviously the big ones against Eubank Jr. Joe Cordina's, again, just won the world title with an amazing, probably KO of the year. You've got
Mm.
John Ryder coming off of his best win against Daniel Jacobs. Felix cashes in and around the mix. Then, like you said, we've got some amazing talent, homegrown talent kind of coming through that academy, if you like. So no doubt we'll start seeing some of those break through this year onto the big stage. But in terms of where the stable's at, it's probably the strongest I've ever seen it.
That's That's pretty cool to hear. And with obviously the John Ryder win being last year, if he gets a big win this year and obviously Conor gets that win against Chris Eubank Jr., you've got to be looking at trainer of the year for Tony.
100%. I think Tony's got to be up for it anyway. Like, just I think obviously and it's for me, it's one of those things where I go with him to the awards every year. I sit next to him, and every year he's put into the mix, and every year I think, he could get it. He could get it. But everybody who seems to win it always has to have a current world champion. And
Mm.
he kind of just been lacking that. Like he's been really close. He's got a really good, solid stable. If you look at the work that he's done with like Felix Cash, Joe Cordina before he won a world title, Conor Benn, how he's kind of taken him from that raw novice right through to where he is today. There's always been that could he win it? Could he win it? Especially last year's one. But this year, I think because Joe Cordina's won that world title, and I think especially if John and Conor go on to have big wins, he's got to win it. He's got to win it. I think it'd be a travesty if he never won it in his career. So yeah, I'll be sitting there cheering him on.
Yeah, this year's the stakes are high. What was your involvement in the, as you mentioned, the Conor Benn Chris Eubank Jr. fight, or I should say, although it might be frustrating for a lot of people, Eubank Jr. versus Benn. What was your involvement in making that fight?
Yeah, so for people who don't know, I'm part of Conor Benn's management team
Yeah.
and comes more of an advisor to him and Tony Sims. Tony Sims is his actual manager, but I'm part of that team. And my involvement is to really work alongside Conor, work alongside Tony, work alongside Lee's lawyer, Liam Taj's lawyer, and we kind of figure out what's the best deal for Conor Benn. And my job really is to open his mind, open up different views, different opinions. How can we manipulate the deal so it's better for Conor and more in his favour?
Yeah.
So that's kind of what I come in and do. And like you said, they're actually, the Eubank Junior fight wasn't that difficult to make.
Okay.
There was a few moments, like you just said, people might get frustrated that it's Eubank versus Ben, but that was because he requested that Eubank. He wanted it to be Eubank versus Ben. And that was one of his demands to make the fight, because if it wasn't Eubank Ben, he didn't want to make the fight. So we immediately agreed some things that we knew we weren't going to bother getting ego involved,
Mhm.
and we allowed him to have the Eubank name on the poster. But listen, Conor's mind frame and mindset is that when that bell goes and we're both standing in the ring, it doesn't matter whose name's on the poster. It just matters who's going to win the fight. So yeah, we negotiated that fight fairly quickly just to make sure that Conor was happy with it. But we're there now. We're approaching it.
Yeah, I saw you tweet that there were difficulties in making the fight. Sometimes you thought it was on. Sometimes you thought obviously it was back on. What were the things that turned it from being on to off at times? Obviously, it was fairly quick from when we first heard the news to when it was announced, but
Yeah. Well, the one sticking point that originally was agreed quite quickly was the weight. And I think everybody thought the weight was going to be a major issue. But actually, Eubank's team suggested the weight to us. And we obviously sat down, went through it. Everything that was looked at in terms of their weight was scientifically proven that Conor could make that weight quite comfortably. Looking at what the weight he fights at in some of his welterweight fights, how he rehydrates, looking at what he walks around outside of camp. So we knew what was possible. Now, people need to understand this from the outside looking in. Conor Benn is still going to have to make weight for this fight because he walks around a lot heavier than the weight that we're talking about. So he's still going to have to make weight. But that weight for Conor Benn really is a lot easier to make and build up into and hydrate to than it would be for Eubank coming down. So we naturally thought that, well, if Chris is suggesting the weight, then he feels comfortable getting to that weight. But we've never actually seen Chris go below 160. So it was quite interesting to see him suggest that. And we agreed that weight pretty quickly. And this was when we thought the negotiations were going fairly smoothly. However, the issue that we had, and this is what kind of dragged it out for a few weeks, was the rehydration. And how serious was Chris about coming in at that weight? And could he potentially just turn up on the day 2, 3, 4 pounds heavier and pay some minimal fines? Well, we had to put in place that there were some pretty hefty fines, hefty enough that it would make a big blow on his purse. And then also the rehydration was a big thing as well. Can't go into too much detail across what the rehydration clause is, but we had to make sure that it was basically fair. So both men get in the ring on the night and they're both in and around the same weight. So look, those were the things that kind of stuck out. Those are the things that kind of took their time to figure out. Obviously, their team pushed back. Our team kept pushing back. And eventually we came to some middle ground where everybody believed that it was fair. And that's what kind of that's what got the fight made in the end. So we're here now. Everybody's signed. Everybody's training. And we're working towards October the 8th.
Yeah, exciting stuff. Is the rehydration clause going to be known to public at all?
I don't think so, unless either party wants to talk about it. But that's really down to them. That's confidential business to them. It might be a case that Eubank wants to talk about at some point, or Conor Benn wants to talk about at some point. But I think ultimately it comes down to them, and it's not really for me to share what that is. But it's really put in place to just ensure that it's a fair, safe fight on the night, because of the elephant in the room really is that Chris is naturally the bigger man, and if he starts hydrating to heavy super middle light heavyweight, and Conor Benn's coming in at light middleweight and he's touching on middleweight, then it's going to be a bit of a mismatch. So it was just about trying to find a rehydration clause that would work for both men to ensure that they can get in the ring and have a fair fight.
Yeah, and that's fair enough, understandable. What did you make of Chris suggesting the weight, and then obviously at the press conference saying, I'm only going to be 60% anyway?
I think that's a clear sign to me, knowing the negotiations of the fight, that his mind now is purely on making the weight. And I think he brought it up, only needs to be 60%, but that's because what he's basically saying is, I'm not going to be too focused on sparring and anything else. This is about purely making the weight, because if he believes he can make the weight and he doesn't need to have the other 40% in his locker, he'll still beat Conor Benn. That's his opinion, but that's what I think. I think right now his mind is just purely on making the weight. He'll be doing all sorts of training, dietary requirements, nutritional requirements to get down. But for Conor Benn, it's completely the opposite. It's more about filling into the weight, being strong at the weight. Sparring heavier guys. He's sparring like big middles, super middles at the moment, making sure that he feels comfortable in there. So completely different, polar opposite routine, but that's what makes this fight so interesting.
Yeah, for sure. Now, I've been speaking to people, obviously, since the fight's been announced. Obviously, there's a lot of casual interest in this. And often an opinion in boxing for any fight, regardless of what weight, is the heavier man will win. What's your side of the argument that Conor Benn being the smaller guy, although he's shown power at welterweight in his last few fights anyway. What's your side of the argument to that? He can have the power. He can win the fight.
Well, I think there's quite a few factors, but a big factor that I don't think anybody's really taken into consideration is that Conor Benn's punch power is freak punch power, and we know that it's one shot KO stuff, and he's had to fill in. He's had to fill in and mature into that. He's always had power, but as you'll notice, his last few fights have been one shot and it's over kind of stuff. So we know that. We know we've been watching him sparring in the gym, sparring middleweights, super middleweights, and the truth is, and Tony knows this more than anybody, he welterweights and light middleweights are not holding up to his power in the gym, and that's wearing the big gloves, the big head guards, protectors. So that's why we're having to ship these bigger guys in to just hold up to the power for the 8 and 10, 12 round sparring. So we know that he's going to carry that power all the way up. He's got his dad's power. His dad was a freakish power puncher, and he's going to carry that right through. But this is the difference. Conor Benn can box if he wants to, and he's got a brilliant defense. And we see it against our jury. People were just applauding him for the slip and slide in and not actually taking any shots. And I think that's going to play a big factor into this fight, because Chris, as much as he's a good boxer, his defense isn't the best. And I think Conor Benn being sharper, fast, in my opinion, faster, more explosive, and having some ring IQ is going to make the fight really interesting. And I think, depending on how the first few rounds go, Conor Benn's got a chance to probably box him for the first half of the fight and potentially take him out in the second half of the fight. But again, I'm saying that purely down to weight and stuff like that. So I think that Conor Benn's going to really shine come up over the 8th. I think we're going to see how good he is, even though it's not going to be his natural weight. But I think what we can see from Conor Benn is that he's going to carry his power through, and that's going to play a big factor in the fight, because we need to demand the respect from Chris Eubank as soon as the bell goes.
Yeah, we had Amir Khan on the channel, and he mentioned he went up in weight in his career and found it hard to then go back down to a lower weight. Do you feel as if Conor coming in at 157, obviously building into that weight over time as well, will then find it more difficult to go quite a few pounds lower in the future after this fight to try and get that world title at welterweight?
I mean, it really depends, because when you look at like history, like Amir Khan said he struggled, or Kell Brook said he struggled. I think from Conor Benn's point of view, he's an athlete all year round, and I can't really speak for Amir Khan or Kell Brook. So he'll be looking to come straight back down to probably welterweight. But you know, when you look at like, and a lot of people comparing this fight to when Khan fought Canelo or when Brook fought Golovkin. It's a different kind of fight, and Conor has different attributes. Amir Khan was a superb boxer, lightning speed, but he didn't pack the punch power that Conor Benn had. And I was there that night when he fought Canelo, and although he was looking good for the first 4 or 5 rounds, he was outboxing, he was quick. Canelo just knew that he could walk through him at some point because he didn't have the power to demand the respect. But the difference is Conor Benn does, and Chris Eubank won't be walking through Conor Benn as easy as Canelo did Khan, or as easy as Golovkin did Kell Brook. Kell Brook could punch a bit, and he was technically brilliant, but we're talking about a prime Golovkin here, and Chris Eubank is different to a prime Golovkin. So it's a completely different fight. Both guys are at completely different ends of their careers. And I think, yeah, if Conor Benn can stay disciplined, remain as a professional athlete all year round, he can get back down to that welterweight. But in my opinion, he'll have to do it pretty quickly. I don't think he should wait. I think he should fight Chris at their agreed weight, and then he should probably come straight back down as quickly as he can to try and allow his body to adjust. I think if you start leaving your body to get used to being at that weight, especially when guys are out of camp, they do tend to eat a lot more, drink a lot more. I think that's going to make it a lot harder. Also, Conor Benn is a young man. He's only 26 years old. Kell and Khan were both respectively a lot older when they moved up in weight. So that's also going to make a big difference. His body will adjust a bit quicker just through his age. and allowing his metabolism to kick in a bit quicker than probably what it would be if he was a lot older. So these are all different factors that we have to bear in mind. But yes, to answer your question, it probably won't be an easy job for him, but he's got a lot of good attributes on his side to allow him to get back down to welterweight if he wants to.
Yeah, fair point. Okay, that was good to talk on that topic. Just one more I want to speak on. Obviously, over the last kind of 24 hours, Tyson's called out Anthony Joshua. I just want to get your opinion on how genuine this is, whether you think Tyson's kind of bluffing. Frank Warren's gone on TalkSport this morning and mentioned they want the fight in November, even though AJ said December. They want it in the UK as well, obviously, given that a lot of fights are happening in Saudi Arabia, obviously AJ's fights as well, and Fury versus Usyk would have been in Saudi if that was happening this year. Do you think it's a bluff?
No, I know that Tyson Fury is actively looking to fight in December. I think contractually he has to for whatever reason.
He's saying November now, though. Don't you find that strange?
Maybe that's the date that they have penciled in. I don't know, but I think it's something to do contractually with Tyson and his agreement with Top Rank or Warren. I'm not sure, but he's actively looking to fight. So whether it was Chisora, whether it was the Mountain, whether it's Usyk, whether it's Joshua, I think he's looking to fight. It's a shame that the Usyk fight can't happen in November, December, because I think everybody would have loved to have seen that fight. But I'm still very interested in the Joshua Fury fight. I think it could be a huge fight. Styles make fights. I think it'd be huge. I mean, for Joshua to come off of 2 losses and walk straight back into that fight, it would say a lot about Joshua's character. Whether it's the right thing to do and not to rebuild at this stage, I don't know. But Joshua is a warrior and he's a fighting man, and he'll want to get in and he'll want to win a world title as soon as possible to get himself back into the mix. That's obviously a fight that if the Fury Joshua fight never gets made, it will go down in history as one of the best British fights never to be made. And I think we deserve as British fans to see 2 of the best heavyweights of this era fight. Whether Joshua's got the belt or not, it will still make an amazing fight because they'll both turn up. But I don't know. Look, Joshua for me needs. If I was part of Joshua's team, I would say rebuild. I would say he needs to sort his training team out. I've heard a lot of whispers that him and Garcia didn't see eye to eye. I'm not sure how true that was, but I think that he probably needs to get his training team right. And whether that's bringing in a new trainer or working with a new trainer for a certain period of time to rebuild and get those fights under his belt and then come back and fight a Fury or a Usyk or whoever's at the top, then I think that's probably a better idea for him. But I'm talking from a manager, boxer perspective and not a fan perspective, because if I'm a fan, I'd love to see Fury fight Joshua. But I think Joshua needs to go back and rebuild and look at maybe bringing in another experienced trainer on his team. And if he is going to be fighting Fury, my opinion is there's only really one man for the job, and that's Tony SIMS. And I know I'm being slightly biased because he's my dad, but let's face it, the best Anthony Joshua we've ever seen was with Tony when Tony SIMS was in his corner. Tony SIMS has also worked with Tyson Fury as well, so he knows both men. He knows what it takes to rebuild somebody. He's done it multiple times with fighters. He's a great communicator. He's experienced, and I think he'll be able to bring Joshua back to where he needs to be. Me and my dad spoke straight after the Joshua fight. He thinks Joshua's got a lot to learn still, even though he's an accomplished world champion and he lost to the better man on the night. There's still a lot in his armory that he needs to sharpen, and I think he needs to get in with somebody now that can really spend the time with him and communicate to him what he needs to do in terms of bettering himself as a fighter and getting himself up with the elite guys like Usyk and Fury, because he's got everything. He's an athlete. He's a brilliant boxer. He's an Olympic gold medalist. But to mix it with these boys, you've got to have everything, and you've got to bring it all together on a night. And I think he needs to go back and rebuild now, whether that's 1 fight, 2 fights, and then come back with a new team and a new strategy. But it was actually a good performance, I thought, against Usyk. I thought he gave a good account of himself. He just fell short on a few things, but nothing that, speaking to my dad, that can't be sorted or tidied up. But we'll see.
Yeah, it would be good to see Anthony, AJ, and Tony back together. So thank you for doing that, and we'll see what happens in the future. Obviously, it'd be good to catch up with you again soon before October the 8th. But it was good to get your insight on a couple of topics in the boxing world today, Charlie. So thanks for speaking to me in Seconds Out, mate.
Thank you. Appreciate your time.